Welcome to the Artistic Foodies, the show that explores life through the lens of art and food. I'm Abbas Mohamed.
And I'm Irfan Rydhan.
And today, we're talking about personal responsibility amidst global crisis, boycott and divestment movements, and the Boycat app with founder Adil Abbuthalha.
Adil Abbuthalha is the founder of Boycat, an app launched in January 2024 that has redirected over $170 million from unethical brands, evolving from a boycott tool into a gamified ethical marketplace. Adil's entrepreneurial journey spans industries including tutoring, fashion, media, and product management, with experiences at companies like Audi. He has spoken globally advocating for value-driven innovation and is leading Boycat's expansion and marketplace development.
What what happened? What happened that made you first of all want to, you found a problem that needed a solution for yourself, and then you chose to seek that solution for the whole world, it seems. What happened? Why did you first get into that?
There's like the surface level story, and then there's a deeper level story, I think. The deeper story behind it, I think it was rooted in frustration, but not with like the world, but like myself in a way, because obviously with October happening, it made us, a lot of us feel like anger, made us a lot of people feel sad, like, depressed, things like that. It's like, how can you live your daily life, enjoy food, enjoy shelter, enjoy water, whatever, and you see like your brothers and sisters getting like slaughtered on the other side of the world? And for me, that was a huge catalyst. I think, like growing up in the Bay Area and being involved in big tech in Silicon Valley, you often see things like, I use this example a lot, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, you see the very, very pinnacle of that pyramid being like that's what people work on in Silicon Valley. Like, they don't care about people on the bottom. They just care about the people that are trying to get more likes on Instagram. They're trying to get, more views on the TikTok type of thing. And didn't feel like there was like a real like effort to change the world or help those that were in need. And it makes a couple of the frustration of feeling so like mad at myself for not being able to do anything on this side of the world to help those that were like suffering. That was kind of like the root of it. It's just like, how can I help myself help those in Philistine right now? And then it expanded more to like, that large scale thing of, well, it starts with yourself, and then once you have yourself down, you have your family down, then you have your community down, and then you have the rest of the world down. And so I was like, trying to solve that one problem. It's just like, why are governments and corporations not listening to the people when, we have millions of people on the streets protesting, millions of people signing petitions, millions of people that are like, stop this, stop supporting this Israeli government that's, clearly anti, Palestinian at this time. And that was like that was it. It was just like, how can I help? And that was like that's a true story. It's just like, how can I help? And the reality was just like, I took a stupid, like, I think it's really annoying, but I took a tech like mindset into approaching this. But I think how, being involved in tech and on the scene, but also I think understanding like Islam was such a big part of it as well, kind of helped me figure out the decision. I was just like, let me solve the idea. Let me solve this. How can someone across the world help out? And it revolved around an action versus just like immobilization. Because there's a really good quote where it says that Muslims are really good at mobilizing for the moment, but really bad at building for the future. And that's a really true statement. Like, we can pack a masjid for something in a second. We can pack the streets in a week for a protest with hundreds of thousands of people, but it doesn't actually amount to anything at the end. There's no outcome that comes out of it. And I wanted to have an actionable thing that led to a direct outcome right away, especially in the world of instant gratification, that allowed someone to want to continue to help more. And I basically discovered, and I kind of summarized, that corporations and governments, they weren't listening to us because we weren't speaking the same language as them. They were speaking the language of money, and we were speaking the language of words. And I had to bridge that gap somewhere. I had to become a translator. And so that's kind of what I did. I was just like, how do I solve that grand idea that if you can enable someone to understand their purchasing power and understand how much value is in a dollar spent collectively, you can really change the world from there. And I've told this story a couple of times now, but post the Hajj one night, I had a dream where I was arguing with someone about why they bought Starbucks. And in the dream, the person was really just like, "Oh, I didn't know. There's an alternative. Like, one cup doesn't really matter." And so kind of like I woke up, and that's how it is with the Hajj stuff. It's like you wake up and the next 3 years of life just flash before your eyes, and like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Like exactly, like word for word, you know exactly what you're doing. And it was beautiful. I mean, just like I think Islam, without Islam, I wouldn't have had any of this. And like it's such a pivotal core thing of my life. And I was just like, all right, I need to solve this. I'm gonna solve it. I have this vision. Like I just have to trust my gut and go with it. And I was revising Surah Yusuf at the time, and it was really cool because I was basically going over like the ayahs about him getting out of jail and stuff. And he basically said this one thing where he was like, "Put me in charge of the treasury because I'm knowledgeable and trustworthy." And it's not out of arrogance that he said that in front of ministers that have been there for years. People have spent their entire careers and lives trying to figure out the economy and stuff like that. But it was the humbleness that he accepted that Allah gave him the gifts, the talents, the expertise to lead a certain movement, whatever it was, no matter how young he was, no matter how probably scrappy he was at the time, right out of jail, basically going to the king's chambers. And so in that same approach, I was just like, I feel like there's something there. Like I have to do it. Like we're entering an age in technology, especially where you either become a provider or the one provided for. Like the gap is expanding even further, and it's going to get to a point where you have to pick one of the two sides. And I was like, why not me? Like I feel like I have the gifts, I have the talents, I have the friends, I have the time, resources, whatever. And I was just like, let's go for it. And so I was like, I'm dedicating my life to solve this for the next X amount of time. I don't know how long it's going to be, but in my dream, it got a couple of years going. So I was like, maybe this is going to be a thing that I do for the next couple of years. So yeah, I mean that's like the origin story of like why it happened.
Was there a specific moment where you felt the need for that? Was there a specific incident that really shook something for you that helped connect certain dots? What were you feeling at the time? Where were you?
I've always wanted to do something like this. Actually, wait, backtrack that even further. I hate politics and I hate social justice. So it's super ironic that I'm in this space. Because, Allah puts puts you in whatever place you need to be in, even if I don't want to be in this space. For me personally, I have and had in the past and still do a very soft spot for like orphans in general. And obviously Islam plays a big part of it. My family plays a big part of it. And like just the concept of if you can help an orphan out, you and the prophet are like, you're tight in Jannah, like type of thing. I just want to attain that level where it's like, what is the highest level a person of our generation can reach? And it's that level. It's like, how can I stand next to him and be his buddy? So I saw him, right? And for me, it was just like, that just stuck. I was like, I want to take orphans. Like, I just want to make sure whatever I do in my life takes care of orphans at some point in time. Obviously, I had my goals, my dreams, and my goals of philanthropy and stuff like that. But I was like, why not today? Like, what can I do today to make sure that dream is, starting to come to reality, basically. And there's just growing frustration working in big tech and working in the space. It's just like, I don't know how you feel about it, but I really hate Silicon Valley, Bay Area, SF culture in general. Because one, it's just cutthroat. It feels like I was actually explaining to my friend Sydney about this past week, but it feels like it's never the mentality that if I can make $1 million and you can make $1 million, let's both make $1 million. It's very much I'm going to make 2 million and you're going to make 0, like that type of thing. And even among the Muslim community, I know friends that have started programs, accelerators, whatever, blah blah, and they're just falling out with friend groups, just falling out with issues and things like that. And it's just really sad to see because it doesn't feel like everyone wants to bring people up where they have different priorities, like, and other people like to take advantage of others and so on from there. And I just hate that. It didn't feel like we were moving towards a better world, and so I want to kind of escape that in a sense. But I don't think running away from the issue is the main thing. I think it's a matter of, can you help restructure and rebuild it properly then in the way it needs to be, so that way everyone can win? Because it's like, at the end of the day, we're like one of the only communities that don't build each other up. We very much tear each other down for the most part. And so there was just a growing frustration that's built up. I think I hit a tipping point with like Philistine where I was like, you guys pretend to care. Like, and it's gonna be a trend where, as sad as it is, like in a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, no one's gonna talk about it anymore. Like that's just the reality of how news cycles work. And I was like, let's just create a way that we can solve this issue, like, and be like a beacon of inshallah change in the future, where people want to build social impact things. They want to build things that better the ummah, where they're not worried about money in a sense, but they know money will come throughout whatever they need to. Um, and so October is just very much a catalyst. Like as sad as it was a catalyst for myself. And I know like there's thousands and thousands of people that have started projects, businesses, ideas, whatever. Some have even left their corporate jobs because like they don't want to be part of a company that's complicit. And they've started their own thing. They've pursued something. They've moved countries. I know people have moved across the world just because of that. And I'm not saying you should do it, but I think there's something more to life than just your 9 to 5 and sitting there and working corporate. Um, Especially when you can have an impact. And I think alhamdulillah, like I've proven that someone that doesn't know how to code and someone that's like hates a space can create impact to some extent, right? Even if it's a bit small, anyone can do it. And so you just have to realize what your gifts are and stuff. And I think that October 7th as a whole was a tipping point where I was just like, not again type of thing. And I was like, I can't stay on the sideline anymore.
You made a lot of good points there. I think, just in my opinion, I think one of the important points that you made was that, all of us, especially here in the Bay Area, we get caught up in the, as they say, the rat race, and just trying to, make ends meet and trying to become a millionaire or what have you. And sometimes we lose sight of the big picture, right? That unfortunately our community, as you mentioned, is not united. This is one reason why we have so many problems all over the world. And I was mentioning this to somebody the other day. I mean, in reality, if all the Muslim countries surrounding that area, if they wanted to, they could easily have stopped all of this by just stop closing off all the imports, exports going into Israel, because there's no way they can survive, in terms of their um, economy, unless they have the trade routes through all the Muslim countries surrounding them. So this just goes to show that, uh, we like to blame all the Western powers, and yes, they do have a big responsibility, but we can't control that. We can control ourselves. So obviously we can't control what governments do, but I think what you're teaching all of us here is, what can I do personally to help my brothers and sisters in Palestine, and as well as other Muslim countries around the world, where what can we do? So one thing which many people are familiar with is the BDS movement, and I think you have recently partnered with them officially. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're the only official partner.
Okay,
Alhamdulillah, it's a good
great.
honor to have.
So tell us a little bit about the BDS movement and how that has made an impact on the economic side of the situation.
Yeah. I think to best answer that question, I kind of have to explain my moonshot goal and kind of where I want to take the entire ecosystem of Boycat as a whole. um, I think it starts off with, it's a multi-step process, and it starts off with unifying people by allowing them to understand their collective action and then organizing them to do something. Um, so providing information to people is super easy. You can get information on social media, you can get information on anything, pamphlets, your local masjid, news, whatever it is. But getting them to actually do something is really hard. And so the concept with Boycat is, you kind of mentioned this idea of unification in countries and surrounding. But what we really want to do is create a digital country in a sense that can have influence and have a seat at the table with things, right? So I use an example quite a bit, but if you had 50 million people onto a platform, that's technically the size of some countries. Like you have influence, you have someone from there. And if you can direct and redirect how people spend money and influence how they spend their money, you can shift economies. Like imagine you go to any corporation and be like, look, if you don't change your stance on Philistine, then we can redirect all these funds in a different direction. Or if you support us and you change your stance and support us, we can bring back money to you. Like our goal isn't to ruin companies, corporations, and stuff. Like at the end of the day, it's just like there are people making those decisions, and we have to realize that. Like if a company wants to take the right stance and change its ways, like let's support it. Like we have to support it. But you also mentioned something interesting where it's like you said Philistine and other Muslim countries, but I think I want to go beyond that. Obviously, I want to platform things like the Uyghurs, things like having Sudan and stuff like that, so we can educate people and unite more people together, so they can understand that while Philistines is the most important at the moment, there are other things that are just as bad that are happening around the world to people that we care about. But even on top of that, Muslims should be pioneering everything else in terms of ethical consumption. Things like, slave labor, child labor, animal cruelty, like we can't stand for that as Muslims. And we just do. Like we let it be to like the ones that are non-Muslim. And the thing is like Philistine, these other things, they're not Muslim or Arab issues. They're humanity issues, but they've been branded often as like we're the ones that own it in a sense. And we shouldn't do that. These are humanity issues, and Muslims should be the ones pioneering each of these humanity issues. It goes back to the idea that I personally hate Muslim businesses in a sense that when you brand yourself as Muslim, like the entire thing, I don't like it because I think we should have businesses that are led by Muslims rather than Muslim businesses. Because we often box ourselves in of we have to just only create it for this group, but we should be aiming to become, the best whatever for overall or something, like we should be aiming to create a product for everyone. And it just happens that the founders are Muslim. And obviously they're successful because they're Muslim and so on from there. Like we have the talents and the gifts, we just have a weird mentality behind it. And so kind of going back to the question of like BDS and what it stands for and its effects and so on from there, we want to create our digital country in a sense where we have all these people where we can influence decisions, whether they're Muslim or not. And then we can, obviously shed light onto a lot of things that we Muslims should care about the most. Obviously starting with like the brothers and sisters in Philistine, Uyghur, Bosnia, Burma, Rohingya stuff, and keep expanding from there. But BDS as a whole, this concept of boycott, divest, sanction stuff, it's important because that's how you have a seat at the table with these economic players. Like you mentioned, some of the countries in the Middle East, they have the power to stop things right away just by, stopping import, export, even just, I'm pretty sure someone told me that one of a specific Middle Eastern country has over like 10% of the US bonds. And if they were to threaten to sell those bonds, then it would tank the US economy, which would, as a result, stop, a lot of the military funding going in a certain direction. And if they just did that, it'd be over. Like that's all, one country, right? And so imagine if we could do that collectively with the people that actually care about people and like have values and have core principles that we should actually be following. And that's what I want to accomplish is get us a seat at the table. And if I'm the right person to lead us in the future, inshallah, at the table, then I'll do it. But if there's someone better than that, we'll hand it off to them. Like there's no ego with this, and there has to be no ego with this type of thing. And so to create a BDS movement at scale is creating that digital country where you can have a seat at the table and you can influence these decisions by basically, in the simplest form, controlling how people spend money. And if you can control how people spend money, you can effectively, shift mindsets, speak the same language as people, and then, actually create direct impact. And we've already seen that happen, right? We've seen the Israeli soccer team lose 2 sponsors. Obviously, Puma's contract, quote unquote, expired. But obviously they didn't renew it because of certain, damages that were coming to their brand and so on from there. Then the Italian brand also dropped them as well because they were facing boycotts, and now Reebok as well. We've seen how effective it is in terms of closing down settlement, like property being built on settlement lands or occupied territory, such as like Pillsbury, right? So when Pillsbury was about to open up a factory on occupied territory, with the mass quote unquote boycotts and so on from there, people were able to help, create enough of a loss and enough of a social commotion where Pillsbury had to stop that, basically. Chegg, I think, moved out of all their offices in Israel as well, too. There's multiple companies that are doing that. So we see how effective it is, and we're starting to see the fruits of our labor just a bit, but it is a long-term play. It's not a short-term play, and I feel like that's one of the hardest parts about this entire thing, is that people often think it's going to happen overnight if they just stop buying for like 2 days, or they help their company stop investing for like a week. But in reality, it's a long-term play where we have to do things with that long-term mindset.
So I know that this app, the Boycat app, has only been around for about a little over a year now. So, for your what's the biggest accomplishment in terms of being able to make a company change its direction so far from the users and your platform?
There's the quantitative approach, and then there's the qualitative approach of how I want to answer that question. I think the coolest accomplishment that I'm most proud of right now actually isn't related to a specific company, but the people itself. We've been able to rally nearly 2 million people in the course of a year to spend in the most clean manner and divest their spending in the past year, or redirect their spending, right? And through some qualitative surveys and different APIs to figure out localized pricing, we've been able to basically track and move $170 million away from Israel and their economies and the companies that support them. I think that is probably my favorite achievement so far, because while we can obviously tailor it down to specific companies, we can have the data that goes to showcase that, we moved over like, $40 million away from like Coca-Cola, for example, and like other companies as well. But the coolest is that we proved that we can organize people and we can actually build out this entire digital country in a sense. So I think that's probably my most favorite accomplishment. But if you're actually looking for proper numbers and stuff, I think Coca-Cola is suffering really bad. I think we've been able to help the BDS movement a lot with their Reebok and their Israeli soccer team approach as well too. It's probably the biggest one that's most recent. But yeah, those are probably my favorite ones, I think, because we actually see the results live.
I'm very curious. You've used the term digital country a few times. What is that? Did you come up with that term? What does it mean when you were talking about it?
Yeah, it's something I basically made up like 5 days ago, honestly. But
5 days ago, you heard it here first, guys. Fresh off the press.
Fresh off the press, literally. The way I see it is, it's a body of people that can connect globally. Because with how countries work nowadays, you're limited to the land that you're on, and it's really hard to move past that and have decisions past that. But you and I mean, I'm in Japan right now. Like, we're chatting, we have the same values, we have the same views. We're able to connect in like a matter of milliseconds. And we can do that with people around the world all over the place at any point in time. And they're all unified in a certain way. But the way I consider it is like, what is the ecosystem for shopping as clean as possible, while at the same time creating a seat at the table? Because I want to have a seat at the table where it's properly run by the people itself. And the best way to quantify, or I guess picture it, is we're creating a bunch of islands where you have a mobile application, you have an extension, you have a web app, you have a bank account integration, you have blah, blah, that we're all kind of building up and we're putting together. And all we're doing is we're simply bridging those islands together and creating an ecosystem that when you think about shopping, you think about Boycat as a whole. And then there are people that are going to exist on these different islands, and they're going to move around, they're going to do things. And in a sense, it's creating a country. Like, that's what it is. That's powered by the digital world. So I guess it's a random phrase I wanted to coin, and hopefully we'll trademark it in a bit.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Karimi Restaurant in San Jose is renowned for its authentic Indian and Pakistani cuisine, crafted with traditional recipes and high-quality ingredients to provide a genuine taste of South Asia. This Hafsa certified halal restaurant also serves Indo-Chinese dishes like chili chicken and Szechuan fried rice, as well as a new specialty addition to the menu, whole fish cooked in a tandoori oven. Karimi Restaurant also provides full-service catering, taking care of everything from food prep to delivery. Karimi proudly serves salam and drink Palestina sodas in their restaurant.
So it's sort of, let me know if I understand the concept right, is essentially a loosely organized economic bloc, essentially, of people, where you have folks that are taking matters into their own hands and using their own dollars as a measure of voting, something that transcends identities and borders and so on.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's voting on values. That's what it is, and that doesn't exist in the physical world that we have today.
So, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, even though the devil doesn't really need anyone advocating for him. He's doing a great job. Um, so to play Shaitan's advocate here, I mean, I'll tell you, like, from the moment I could speak here and read English, I knew about the occupation of Palestine and the ongoing genocide. It's been going on my entire life, right? I've showed up to protests. I've written poetry. I've recited it on TV, thinking that reaching a lot of people is going to make a difference, but it hasn't. And I'm quite discouraged now. At this point, I'm being told to avoid my favorite drinks. I just got hooked on Coke Zero, and I can't have Coke Zero anymore. I mean, I'm just one person. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm not going to be able to change anything, no matter how much I boycott. Most of my the all of my taxes are going towards that big chunk of my income, whether I do something or not about the products I buy. Way more money is going towards the government, anyways, and that's going to end up exactly where it's going to end up. So why bother?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the Muslim answer, and then there's the other answer as well too, right? Because it's your afterlife at a certain point too. There's a quote, there's a line that I like to use a lot. I'm full of one-liners, by the way. That's the whole point. Just just get the Jalen Hurts one-liners, and then have people quote it. One of his, this is a sidetrack, but one of my favorite ones from his is I had a purpose before anyone had an opinion. That's one of my favorite ones. But here, the thing is with your little situation and scenario, is the reality is that your risk is written. If it's meant for you to have food in your stomach by the end of the day, you're going to have food in your stomach. And it's up to you to decide if it's going to be clean or it's not. If it's meant for you to make $1 million at the end of the year, you're going to make $1 million. Whether you choose to do it by selling things like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Starbucks, or if you do it by selling the clean alternative, you're still going to make $1 million. But now imagine yourself on the day of judgment. And let's just say you were eating dates that were grown on occupied territory, whatever, and you get questioned. It's just like, why would you eat dates that were grown with the blood of your brothers and sisters in Philistine, type of thing? Like, you're gonna have a date no matter what if it's destined for you. But why choose the one that is contributing even a sliver to that entire occupation or the lands and so on from there? And the non quote unquote Muslim answer is any contribution is still complicity in a way. If you witness something and you choose to not talk about it, you're still complicit. If you see someone getting robbed on the street and you just look at them and watch them, and you're like, they're 5 steps ahead of me, I'm not going to catch them anyways, there's no point. Like, that's such a cowardly answer, in my opinion. It's like, why don't you at least try? And I think the reality is a lot of it's built into Islam. It's like, we're not meant to be perfect. Like, in Islam, it doesn't ask you to be perfect at the end of the day. It says, just put in effort in the Quran, right? Like, it says, put in a little bit of effort so you're better than the next day. And so I think once we realize that it's really important. The third part maybe is, I just thought about it, is like, collectively we've proven we're very powerful. So why are you sitting outside like the collective movement right now, right? We just need to organize people a little bit better and be a little bit more effective. And as we keep growing, we'll be able to like have more instant gratification in the results. Is kind of how I'd think about it. Because the reality is, like, when you say it's like it's just one person, it's like a matter, blah blah. My taxes are going this direction, things like that. It's like that's out of your control. But what you can control is stuff you should be controlling, focusing on the most. And once we get to a really good point, we'll be able to see what we can control and how much money you can spend properly, and really change those decisions. Did that answer your question?
It's interesting. I mean, it's a question that didn't really have an answer. So I appreciate what you shared. And that it kind of made me think also about just even the framing of the question itself comes from a selfish place of like, I want to make a difference. I have been doing all of this. Why am I not seeing the results in my lifetime? Right? You're talking about that instant gratification, right? And if that comes from a place of I, then it's never really. It's kind of like going down the path of religion, and you end up worshiping religion instead of worshiping God. It's we see this a lot, unfortunately, where the image of wanting to be an activist means I'm going to dress a certain way, I'm going to listen to certain things, and I'm going to appear a certain way and talk a certain way and vote a certain way, to where that identity becomes more important to me than anything else. Right, to a point where now if a conservative far right person is doing something that could potentially lead towards a liberated Palestine, because they are not of this identity, I'm not going to accept it. Right. um and so it's kind of like the ego that takes over, that desires that instant gratification. If you take the ego out of it, you can actually plan for generations and plan for the building of nations. Kind of what you were talking about is like, what is a long term and how do we build for the generations to come, right? And a big part of that is like, if you can show me a very direct example of how this works and how this actually creates an impact, I'm much more likely to believe you. So I'm really glad that you brought up a couple examples, and hopefully you can share some more as well, just to motivate people to not be complicit in genocide. It's genocide, people. It's genocide. All right, get it together. Download the app. Um, it reminds me of a story from the time of Prophet Ibrahim, right? So huge fire, there's Nimrod throwing the prophet into right into the heart of the fire, because he's a hater, right? Prophet Abraham, he's spreading the good word, he's spreading the light of Allah, and in the message towards worshiping one God. And Nimrod was just a hater; he was not having it. So he cast Ibrahim right into the center of the fire, and it was so hot that they could not even cast him by hand; they had to throw him by catapult because the fire was so large. Now, some birds are passing by, and this bird sees what's happening and immediately just beelines, books it right to the closest creek, fills up its beak, and comes back to put a beak full of water on the fire. And I'm not talking about a pelican with a huge, huge beak and a huge capacity for water. This was just a bird, right? So how much water is really uh, being used to douse the fire? And so his bird homie says, "Why are you wasting your time?" He says, "The fire is huge. What are you going to do with one beak full of water?" And the bird says that, on the day of judgment, when God looks at me and I'm looking at God and there's no one else that matters in that conversation, is he going to ask if I put out the fire? No, he's going to ask what I did in regards to putting out the fire. Does God expect me, one tiny bird, to take care of this entire fire and save his prophet? No. But God does expect me to do whatever I can do, whatever I do have in my power, in my control. So I think about that a lot, and I think about, if I'd created the app, I'd call it Boy Bird. But let's talk about the app as well. First of all, where did the name come from, and if you can segue from that into just telling us about how it works, like how you built it and also how it works for the user.
Yeah, of course. So Boycat as a whole, it's already a play on words. It is somehow no one took it. No one is just available for me. I wanted it to happen, so it happened. I'm obsessed with cats. I don't know. I have it's actually based off of my cats itself. One that passed away in 2019, and then my two twin orange cats as well. Um, so cats has always been a huge thing, and I feel like inherently we all kind of like cats, and it just felt like it was good branding because I was like, this is such a heavy topic, and this is something so hard to talk about oftentimes that you want to encourage people as much as possible to do it with them realizing, or even without them realizing. And that's kind of the goal, because we'll always have 5% of people that really, really care about Palestine and so on from there, and we'll have 5% of people that hate us no matter what. But how can you get the 90% of people in the middle and to kind of sway in your favor? And it's by creating a good brand that people just want to get behind. Like we want to make it cool to like shop clean, boycott, whatever. We want to make it shameful that if we see you in McDonald's or Starbucks, we give you the side eye type of thing. Right? We want to make it like that and make it so fun where it's like if you get associated with a red cat, then you're negative, and if you get associated with like a happy cat or a fun cat, it's fun to be a part of. So it's creating a culture and creating a brand, which is super, super important, I think, in creating longevity. But everything just fell into place. Like it took like a day, and then the branding was just there because it was just like, how do you create something so fun and entertaining that people like, and things just fell into place, and alhamdulillah, it worked out great. I'm not gonna take all the credit because obviously my friends were there too, as I brought them along. And now all three of us are just working together on it from like January onwards. But yeah, so that's like the background behind Boycat as a logo, as a name. So it's based on my cats that we have. And I was just like, imagine if you had a super sassy cat following you around, telling you what to do and what not to do. It just feels like it's reality. Like your cats will, tail you around. They'll be super cuddly and fun at one point, and other times they'll just randomly run around the room and hit you and do random things. It just feels right. But the app itself is interesting, and the extension and the web app and so on from there. It's all interesting, I guess, in the sense that I took it from a perspective of how does a human think, and that's just the reality of how I built the entire thing. Where when I say I built the entire, I meant like we built the entire thing, but like how I was structuring out the different features and how I was helping, I was developing out different parts of it and so on from there. But it started off with just like the first thing is like when you see a product or brand, like you want to know information about it. So the easiest way to do it is one, take a picture or search it up. And since all these products have barcodes and we could get a lot of them from scraping different websites, online stuff, whatever, that was like the first step. It's like one, you can scan a barcode, or you can even search for a brand, and it would give you the information regarding that brand, a reason why you should avoid it, if there's a reason, some sources, so you have proof of we're not just like we're not making up out of thin air. And then alternatives, and that was super important. Alternative brands and alternative products, because we want people to find it easy to boycott by finding the alternative that's easy for them. We want to reduce boycott fatigue, so we partner with BDS to create a leveling system where no matter where you're in the world, at least if you boycott these things, you're going to have an impact. And then if you're more privileged and you're able to find alternatives in your area, let's say you live in SF or LA or New York, you probably have more alternatives than the average person in like the middle of Idaho or something, like then you can go up to the next level where it's like, all right, now you should boycott these ones as well because they're parents and subsidiaries of these major complicit companies that are involved with the IDF, the economy, and so on from there. And then level 3 is kind of like the people that just want nothing to do with the Israeli government at all. Like it's great if everyone could do it, we should do it, but 90% of things you touch in your day-to-day, they're all attached to Israel at some point. And so we just got to figure out those red lines where people can cross and they can't cross, where no matter what, they're having an impact on the entire movement. So that was important for us, and then go from there. Beyond that, we actually have a couple extra fun things that have been teased out. They've been kind of started to be developed. They're not like fully functional in certain parts of the world, but really just getting people an idea and a taste for what's coming over the next basic year or so. We have a news feed that I I post news basically every day except when I'm traveling. It comes every other day or every 3 days, just so we can give you information on like the latest products, the latest initiatives, the results of people's boycotts. I think I was in Malaysia last week and we were just chatting with like KFC, McDonald's, like and Pizza Hut. They've closed over like 600 stores in the past like two months or something. It's insane how much like the movement is growing here in this area. And we just need to replicate that in the West and then beyond that as well too. It's super important. So just having that information, having that motivation, because it's like if your brothers and sisters across the world can do it, why not you? Right? And so doing that is super important. And then after that, we start, teasing out discoverability of products and so on from there. Because once we tell you what to avoid, we want to show you what you can buy. And we're trying to create that entire alternative ethical marketplace, right? Where whatever you buy, it's a safe product, it's clean, it supports your values. And so we're starting to tease out products and businesses that we're partnering with to create that as a whole. I'm going to skip the next one and then we'll go to a profile. So the profile is interesting because it's the beginning of socialization. It's like you said, one person, it doesn't feel like you're doing much. Even if you boycott $5,000, right, in a year, whatever it is, it doesn't feel like much. But if you and all your friends did that, then it starts to add up. And then if you and your community starts doing that, it starts to add up. And then if you and your state start to do that, it really adds up. And so having that collective space where you can join teams, you can track and earn badges for doing certain things, get into the streak system where you can log in every day, just go on leaderboards, see who's scanning the most, who's searching the most, things like that, who's submitting the most product information. It makes you feel like you want to be a part of a movement because you see the results that are happening. You know that other people are doing it and you're not alone. Especially with teams, as we start, building out the rest of it with like team battles and team chats and storefronts and so on from there. We create communities it's like Reddit, right? There's millions of communities that people want to be a part of, and they're part of it because they know that they're not alone in their interests, right? And that's super important for us. So creating that social aspect is actually coming up on our roadmap. It's like our next big thing. And we've teased out gamification a bit, but it's really important to reward users for positive behavior and for boycotting and for doing the right thing. And so there'll be some really cool updates with that in the near future. And the feature that you guys both might be interested in the most is actually called Zoomies. It was at 3 a.m. when I was building it. My cats were zooming around, 3 a.m. zoomies. And I was like, they're zooming. It just feels right. And the concept of zooming was that they were in different locations at once. And so I was thinking like something like Yelp, something like Google Maps when you look for like food and reviews and services. I'm like, let's create this thing. And this feature called Zoomies is in beta within the app right now, but our next update is actually coming out tomorrow, which is really cool. So by the time this is out, you'll have it out there. But a fully functional aspect where you can find services, restaurants, food, whatever in your area that is all Boycat approved. And we just launched our Boycat certification program so companies can register to be certified Boycat approved, which means we can connect them to our users and be like, hey, go support this business. It's, clean politically and so on from there. And so we want to connect to as many businesses as possible, give them the certification, have them apply, have a certain set of guidelines where they can't sell things like Coca-Cola, the main BDS priority stuff. And what we do is we want to connect them to our wholesaler list where we have a bunch of distributors for all the alternative Coca-Colas, get them contracts so they can replace their Coca-Cola contract, and then we promote them from there because we want to reward businesses for doing the right thing. And at the same time, we want to reward the alternatives for being built. And so, it's a win-win for everyone at this point because now you can support businesses that are clean. And so I'm really excited about this feature that's coming out. It's already out, but it's coming out tomorrow properly. And as we start onboarding more and more restaurants and businesses and services and plumbers, electricians, whatever, you'll start creating an entire ecosystem database where you're only reliant on these companies that are pro your values, right?
That's a much bigger impact too, because instead of talking about a bird's beak full, now we are talking about pelicans.
Yeah, exactly. Because consumer goods is great and all, but there's a huge market for your everyday life of everything you buy, where you buy, who you employ, so on from there. And it starts circulating the money within the communities that we care about. And that's really important. Because, we have this, then we have our extension, which, right now, and this is actually why I hired my first intern last week for, but we want to expand our extension out to every single online shopping platform where, we want you to get off Amazon eventually, but it's so convenient that 99% of people won't do it. It's just too easy to get something at your door in 3 hours. Like that's it. There's always cheaper deals, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so to start, we tell you what not to buy. Then we started showing you the alternative products you can buy on Amazon itself. Eventually we'll get you off Amazon, but it's a multi-step process in the long run. But being able to do that on every single website and making sure that if you're on something like Wix.com, for example, we provide you the alternatives and the discount codes to get a different website platform that you can use and sell as well. And so, yeah, just educating people on every aspect of their life is super important for us. And that's kind of what we have out there right now. Our web app is being updated this week as well too. So we'll have web app search, so that way people, if they don't want to use the app, they can use the web app. Just search for a quick brand and so on from there. Get more information in the app itself. But yeah, that's kind of the ecosystem, the digital country that's being built right now.
It's really interesting with the digital country stuff as well. Because I think the more we think about how we are as an ummah, like the nation state idea kind of falls apart, right? When you think about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says the ummah is like one body, right? One part is hurt, but the pain is felt everywhere. And that concept doesn't make sense under like very strict borders and nation states. It only makes sense when you sort of zoom out and you see the connection of hearts, really.
Yeah, exactly. I actually hate culturalism a lot, because I think it's an issue and a root issue for a lot of major problems we have around the world. Um, so I'm mixed. So that's probably why I also hate it. But because I get the worst of both worlds.
Your next app can help cure culturalism as well.
Hey, this might be it though. Like, that's the thing. It transcends beyond ethnicity, race, whatever, religion.
It's curious that you mentioned also the different aspects and parts of identity. I think for the most part, we've been talking about specifically Palestine and the occupation of Palestine. Now, in an ideal world, you are working to work yourself out of a job. In an ideal world, you don't need Boycat. Um, I'm very curious to know if this is isolated specifically to the occupation of Palestine. What are you doing as far as other causes that BDS and boycotting can help affect and impact? And how can people get to know this? What deems one crisis worthy compared to another?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think it's multi-step, right? So to answer the first part of it, there's three North Star metrics I like to use, and two of them we can't use yet. But the first is money we've been able to divest and move away from, these governments, economies, and so on from there. But eventually, what we want to do is not just look at what we've been able to avoid, but how much money can we redistribute to an economy we care about? How much money can we track going into brands and ethical companies and good places? But the ultimate North Star and success metric is, and you actually mentioned it, which is really funny that I'm glad it's starting to be apparent, but the perfect day is when Boycat is no longer used anymore, which sounds counterintuitive. But it means we're at a place in the world where you no longer have to worry about if a company is ethical or not, because it's already ethical. Um, so yeah, I think a perfect day is when we have 0 users in the future. And hopefully it's on, inshallah, for a good reason and not a reason that everyone abandoned us.
Inshallah.
But in terms of other causes, that's actually a really tricky question, because it goes into morality, and everyone has a different moral compass in a sense. And so I rely on Islam as the moral compass that we can use. And simply put, I start off with oppressions around the world. It doesn't matter what ethnicity or what religion they are, but if there's an oppressed individual in the world somewhere, we need to support them. And after that, we'll figure out the next steps from there. But it's a bridge we'll get to when we cross to it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But in terms of just like platforming causes, there are other causes out there that deserve a platform. Like I mentioned a couple of them, like Burma Rohingya, the Uyghur stuff, the Bosnian stuff that was happening, the stuff in Kurdistan as well too. Basically, any form of governmental oppression we'll start off with, and then we'll expand to whatever else we need to from there. That wildly affects us, at the core of Islam as well too.
I know that you don't do, or your background is not in coding, and you kind of learned that on the fly yourself. So what is your actual educational background before all this started, or what was your regular job that you were doing before all this?
I studied neurobiology in college. I was supposed to become a doctor. My brother's a doctor, same old stuff. But I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. I did not want to sit through med school residency and then become a doctor after that, watching him go through it. So mad props to him. Like he was able to fight through it and live up to the parents' expectations, be the favorite child, all that fun stuff. But I just taught myself like basic product management and some data science work. Like I understood people a bit, and I understood that all consumer tech and all like B2B stuff is how do you convince someone to buy something? Like that's what it really was. Like, how do you convince them to spend their money? Which is pretty funny because it kind of all added up perfectly into Boycat as well too. But I just like building stuff. I like putting things in the hands of people and seeing people use things, whether it's a digital product, physical product, a community, whatever it was. I like seeing people involved. And so building things was always like inherently built in. But yeah, I was working in big tech. That was it. Alhamdulillah.
Well, that's great. Well, glad you didn't go into medicine. But
Said no Desi dad ever.
last question that I have is, you know, as you probably know, in the U.S. they have laws in, I think, over 30 states, maybe more than that, where you're not allowed to boycott Israel if you want to have like a state funded job or something like that. And the government tried to ban TikTok mainly because of the pro-Palestine uh, posts and stuff. So have you received any kind of pushback or any kind of legal issues from large corporations or maybe, Zionist or what have you?
Yeah, every day at this point. Starting off, we got taken off the Google Play Store. Like that was the first thing for spreading misinformation, even though we used an Israeli newspaper as a source. And I was like, you guys literally say Caterpillar built this type of bulldozer for you. It's in your source. It's in your article. And so, alhamdulillah, I got connected to people in Google, got back up. It was great. Then I got fired from my job because they found out about, me building this. It was all over the news a couple of times. Get death threats every week, every other week type of thing. Like it's pretty normal at this point. We're kind of used to it. And we know that we're effective and we know that it's working because 4 weeks ago, Israel launched a $150 million Hasbara fund to help with their propaganda. And we got 3 offer letters to buy us out from Israeli slush companies. I think I tweeted about this, so I don't know if you were ever on my Twitter, but it went a little bit viral and it's out there. So we know it's effective and we know they want to shut us down, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm not even entertain. It's not even. I'm not even entertaining at this point. It's just really funny to see those emails come in and some of the offers and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. I think, but a lot of pushback. But we brand ourselves in an ethical way. You can't force someone to buy something. Like that's the reality. You can't force someone to avoid something. So we build it in a way that it's compliant with your values. You're not compliant with your values. We take a bit of a psychological approach towards things, community approach towards things, and we simply just say like there's alternatives that exist out there. Might as well just try them. Like we're not anti anything, and that's kind of the point. It's kind of how we get around a lot of these things.
All right, that's good. One suggestion I have for you is, take an offer of $1 billion and then just create a new app called Boybird.
Might have to take you up on that one, but I think that name might be trademarked after this video.
Yeah, I'm playing checkers, man. We gotta think chess here.
Yeah, if somebody wants to pay you $1 billion, man, I'll take that and just make another app.
That's user data I cannot afford to give away.
I really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your travels and out of the really important work that you do to sit with us and talk to us. And your time is very valuable. And we're just so grateful for this chance, especially with Ramadan coming up and being very conscious of where we spend our money. I think there's something to be said about Ramadan where we focus a lot on the biological aspects of fasting, but with the help of an app like Boycat, we can enjoy good food, we can enjoy a proper iftar while making sure we don't buy dates from Israel. Because imagine opening a fast with an Israeli date, right? So this is the world that we live in, and without guides and without sort of tips and help from apps like Boycat, it's a really dark world that we're trying to navigate and traverse and leave as minimal of an immoral impact or footprint, if you will. I don't think any of us can really make it out scot free, but it's that consciousness, that awareness that you were talking about. And ultimately that's that Muslim element that you were speaking about as well. So I really appreciate that. the perspectives that you shared, the app that y'all have built, and really the work that you're doing even right now, traveling and getting the word out and building this digital nation, the digital country that you're talking about is really inspiring to see.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. I mean, for platforming me and hearing the story and hearing me yap for the past hour. I don't know if anything was valuable. Hopefully you get some good one-liners or something out of it. But I look forward to giving you an update in about a year where, we can stand and how much we've done and accomplished, and if that nation is open for citizenship yet.
I love that. That's a great one-liner right there. And also to set the record straight, not everyone loves cats. Hot take. I'm allergic. Like violently allergic.
That's
If
your
a
loss,
cat
my friend.
was somewhere 2 days before I got there, I'm still gonna have a reaction. Like it's bad.
Well, speaking of cats, my wife adopted a cat like about 6 months ago. The first time that we've had any kind of pet. So first I was, luckily I'm not allergic, but first I was reluctant. But the kids, I have 2 kids, they kept asking for it. So, but now it's Mimi the cat. She's part of our family now. So it's a good thing. It's a
For those that are allergic, they'll have the Boycat as their cat from now on. The digital cat.
Digital cat.
Digital cat.
Yeah.
Send me an email.
Amazing.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Artistic Foodies. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Be sure to find us on Facebook and Instagram to stay tuned for more episodes as well as bonus content. You can also have access to all of our episodes at theartisticfoodies.com.
This podcast has been brought to you by HalalFest Incorporated and GAMA, gathering all Muslim artists.
Free Palestine, free Palestine.
تحيا فلسطين.
From the river
to the sea. يلا. This one's for Haifa, Yafa.